was approached by a male classmate, but she rejected him. The classmate, embarrassed and angry, grabbed her hand tightly. Emily picked up a glass from the table and splashed the wine in his face. Suddenly, she felt dizzy and suspected that her classmate Olivia had secretly drugged her drink. In a panic, she hurriedly left, but the male classmate chased after her. She saw a man in the snow who put a cigarette in his mouth, then took out a lighter and lit it. The smoke quickly billowed from his mouth. The male classmate shouted, "Emily Brown, stop right there." The man heard it, turned to look at her, and walked toward her. The male classmate also approached, and Emily could no longer keep herself upright. She collapsed, her glasses falling, but a large hand caught them. The man threw her over his shoulder and glared at the male classmate. Her classmate immediately recognized him as the powerful billionaire Andrew. The classmate, terrified, collapsed to the ground, and Andrew coldly told him, "You're asking for death." After speaking, he turned and carried Emily away. When Emily woke up, she saw the man in front of her. She recognized him. He was her classmate Luna's uncle. He snapped his fingers, and she was a little scared, but he only turned on the voice-controlled lights. Andrew told her, "I've had a doctor check you out. You're fine. Your male classmate has already been dealt with by me." Emily panicked, thinking he had killed the male classmate. Andrew leaned close to her and said, "He's not dead. What are you afraid of?" He put her glasses on her and said, "I've prepared a room for you. Stay at my place tonight." The next morning, the maid, Mary, prepared a lavish breakfast for Emily. Mary liked Emily very much and thought that she and Andrew made a perfect couple. Later, Emily went to class and saw Olivia, the one who had drugged her the night before. Olivia pretended to be unaware, but Emily directly exposed her wrongdoing. Olivia had always been her best friend, but now she had betrayed Emily for money. Emily couldn't accept it and cut ties with her. Back at the dorm, she told Luna what had happened the night before. Luna was furious and wanted to get revenge, but Emily stopped her. To thank Andrew, Emily decided to bake a box of cookies for him. Luna took the cookies to Andrew, who looked uninterested. However, when she mentioned, "These cookies were made by Emily herself for you," Andrew immediately looked up. He remembered the night he saved Emily and carried her on his shoulder. He picked up a cookie and took a bite. His friend Tom also wanted a piece, but Andrew stopped him, saying, "Get lost." After school, Emily received a call from her father. Her father and stepmother told her, "Your brother Kevin got drunk at a bar. Go to the bar and bring him back." Emily felt disappointed. Her family rarely called her, and now they were asking her to go to a bar in the middle of the night to pick up her drunk brother. Her stepmother noticed her reluctance and became angry, saying, "The only reason you can go to college is because we paid for your tuition. You should be grateful." Left with no choice, Emily went to the bar. The men in the room all ogled her in a suggestive way. She spotted her stepbrother Kevin asleep on the couch and woke him up. Kevin was cold toward her, and she said, "I'll give you two choices. First, you come with me. Second, I'll call the police. You're a minor, but you snuck into a bar, which is illegal." Kevin's friend Bruce got angry, stood up, and grabbed a bottle of liquor to threaten Emily. She didn't back down and said, "I've already told my friend that if I don't leave the bar within 20 minutes, she will call the police. Do you dare hit me?" She then escorted her brother Kevin out of the room, but Bruce, still furious, followed with the bottle. He swung it at Emily, but Andrew extended his arm to block the bottle. Andrew said to Bruce, "Since you like throwing bottles, I'll let you have your fun." He ordered his bodyguards to seize Bruce and then grabbed a bottle himself, smashing it hard at Bruce. Bruce was terrified and begged for mercy. Seeing Emily also looking scared, Andrew comforted her, saying, "Don't be afraid, I won't kill him." He then grabbed another bottle and hit Bruce in the stomach. In agonizing pain, Bruce collapsed to the ground. Andrew noticed that Emily's leg had been accidentally cut by the bottle shards, so he picked her up. She was frightened and wanted to go back to school on her own, but Andrew told her, "Hold on to me." She nodded shakily. Once in the car, Emily thought about her cold-blooded family, holding back her tears, not daring to cry. But Andrew told her, "It's natural to feel wronged. Crying is your right to vent. Why bottle it up?" Emily replied, "I've known since I was little that the child who cries doesn't always get candy." Andrew had the driver pull over, then he walked into a store. When he came back to the car, he put a piece of candy in her mouth and said, There was a little girl who didn't get candy when she cried, so now I'm making it up to her." Emily smiled, feeling a long-lost warmth. She said to Andrew, "Uncle, you've saved me twice. I want to repay you. You can ask me for anything." He asked anything. She nodded. His assistant chuckled. As to him, Andrew was like a cunning wolf, and Emily was like a pure little rabbit. She was about to get out of the car, but Andrew suddenly grabbed her hand and said, "The cookies you made for me last time were really good. Could you make me some other pastries?" She agreed, and he saved his phone number on her phone. After she got out of the car, Andrew secretly smiled. A few days later, Emily went to Andrew's house, bringing with her some freshly baked pastries she had made for him. He checked the injury on her ankle, and she accidentally caught a glimpse of his chest muscles. She felt a little shy, her heart racing. He took a bite of the pastry and asked, "Why is this so sweet?" She was confused because she hadn't put much sugar in it. He leaned closer to her and said, "Sweetie, this is really sweet." Only then did she realize he was teasing her. He stuffed the whole piece of pastry into his mouth and smiled. She smiled as well. Summer vacation arrived, and her roommate told Emily that the school would be repairing the electrical circuits during the break, so it wouldn't be suitable for living. Soon after, Emily told Luna that her senior, Michael, had helped her rent a place. He had even let her use the baking room before, so she decided to invite him to dinner. Luna, mentioning this casually to her uncle, made Andrew feel jealous. Luna, however, thought Emily and Michael made a perfect couple and jokingly teased Andrew for being their matchmaker. Andrew, irritated, left in a huff. That evening, Emily returned to the house she had just rented, only to be turned away by the landlady. The landlady told her, "I've decided not to rent this house to you. You need to move out." Emily tried to argue, but the landlady immediately shut the door. Her mother called her soon after and said, "I'll be very busy this summer, so I don't want you staying at my place. Go stay with your father." Emily felt deeply hurt, but tried to stay calm as she hung up the phone. As she carried her luggage, it accidentally fell down the stairs, breaking her last emotional barrier. She sat in the snow, feeling utterly helpless. Just then, a car pulled up beside her. Andrew got out, holding an umbrella. He opened the umbrella and walked over to Emily. She looked up, surprised to see him. He took her hand, helped her up, and said, "Come with me." Once in the car, Emily still felt heartbroken. Andrew comforted her, saying, "You're just a victim of your parents' failed marriage. It's not your fault, so don't blame yourself. You'll receive a lot of love in the future because you deserve it." She was touched by his words. He continued, "You can stay at Luna's place for the summer. Her house is also one of my properties." She was about to refuse, but he reminded her that she had promised to repay him, and this was his first request. His assistant couldn't help but laugh. Luna told Emily that Andrew's mood had been unpredictable recently, and she guessed that he might be in a relationship. Emily felt a bit down upon hearing this. Late at night, Emily went to the living room and ran into Andrew, who was smoking and looked upset. She asked him if something was bothering him, and if so, maybe she could help. He replied, "It's something to do with feelings." Emily felt sad, thinking Luna's guess was correct, so she answered indifferently, "Something to do with feelings? I can't help you with that." Andrew was a little disappointed by her response. Emily then said, "Uncle, I admit that when I heard you have someone you like, I wasn't happy." He was surprised and stared at her. She quickly added, "Like Luna, I see you as an important elder, so I'm afraid that after you start dating, you won't care about me anymore, like my parents did." He felt disappointed again, because he never wanted to be her elder. The next day, when Emily woke up, she saw a note left by Luna saying she had gone out of town for training. After Emily came downstairs, Andrew handed her a candy and patted her head. He then took her out for a meal, and during the meal, he left the room to take a phone call. Rose walked into the room and said she knew Andrew, speaking with an obvious attitude of provocation towards Emily. But Emily didn't back down and bluntly told Rose that her manner was impolite, which left Rose speechless. When Andrew returned, he was very cold towards Rose and told her to move aside. Rose tried to get closer to him, but he asked, "Who are you?" Emily secretly smiled. Rose was left embarrassed, so she had no choice but to leave. Emily told Andrew, "I don't like that woman. She spoke to me with hostility and even misunderstood that we're in a romantic relationship. I don't want to cause you any trouble." Suddenly, Andrew leaned down close to her and said, "I don't mind if she thinks that." "Sweetie, would you consider it?" She asked, "Consider what?" He gently touched her hair and replied, "Would you consider being my girlfriend?" Her heart raced, and she hurriedly refused. Andrew pretended to be sad and said, "It's because I'm not good enough." Emily said, "No, you're great. I'm sure many girls like you." He replied, "Others like me, but you don't like me." Emily stood up in panic and said, "How's that possible? I like you." She realized what she said and tried to explain, but he took her hand and leaned closer to her, saying, "I know you like me, your uncle." She stopped trying to explain, and he smiled triumphantly. In the middle of the night, Emily felt stomach pain from her period and went to the living room to get some water. When Andrew saw her, he picked her up and said, "Let me carry you back to your room, and I'll bring you some brown sugar water." He carried her to the bed, covered her with the blanket, and then patted her head. Afterward, he made her some brown sugar water and noticed that her hands and feet were cold. So, he slid his hands under the blanket, took her feet in his hands, and warmed them up. Emily felt very shy and almost choked. The next day, Emily attended a seminar, and her senior, Michael, offered to take her home. Andrew saw Michael being very concerned about Emily at the door, which made him feel jealous. Later, he and Emily had a big argument in the car. Later, Michael texted her, inviting her to a party, and she agreed. The next day, she went to the party, only to find that Andrew was also there because the event was organized by his company. Michael, concerned that Emily might have a fever, touched her forehead. Andrew happened to see this and became even more jealous. Soon after, Michael prepared a surprise for Emily, holding a bouquet and confessing his feelings to her. But just then, the lights in the room suddenly went out, and Andrew took Emily's hand, leading her away. In the dark storage room, he pinned her against the wall. She tried to resist, but he held her hands and kissed her forcefully. Her friends searched for her, but she couldn't make a sound. Afterward, she rejected Michael's confession, and he sadly left. Andrew then carried her to a chair and passionately kissed her again. Enraged, she slapped him hard and called him a jerk. He told her, "I'm actually not a saint. When I first met you, I had impure thoughts. And the reason I've been taking care of you isn't because you're my junior. To be frank, from the moment I saved you, I've wanted to possess you." He kissed her cheek and continued, "I want to be with you. Please think about it, okay?" She agreed. He smiled and patted her head, but she pulled away quickly and rushed out of the storage room. The next morning, during breakfast, Andrew apologized to Emily and kissed her cheek again. She shyly told him, "You promised me you wouldn't kiss me suddenly." He replied, "I only promised not to kiss your lips. I'll give you time, don't worry." While shopping, Emily ran into Rose by chance. Rose mocked her for being poor and unable to afford a $10,000 dress. The salesperson tried to kick Emily out, but the female manager appeared and told Emily, "We'll give you this dress as an apology gift. Furthermore, you can choose any clothing in the shopping mall, all for free." Rose's friends were upset, but the manager responded, "If you keep causing trouble, we'll have security remove you." Rose angrily left. The manager told Emily that the higher-ups had instructed her to take good care of Emily. Emily thought it was Andrew's doing, but it was actually his father who had secretly given the order. Later, Andrew received a call from his father, who scolded him for not protecting the girl he liked well enough. His father had happened to be at the mall that day and saw Emily being bullied by Rose, so he helped her. Andrew was furious and ordered his assistant to blacklist Rose and her friend from the mall. Additionally, he planned to lower the cooperation prices with the Rose family's business. Emily's friend called her to say that her just turned 18-year-old sister was pregnant. Emily went with her to the hospital, and right after she left the ward, she ran into her mother. Her mother thought Emily was the one who had gotten pregnant out of wedlock and slapped her, scolding her for being shameless. Just then, Andrew appeared. When he saw the bruise on Emily's mouth, he was heartbroken. He told her mother, "I'm Emily's suitor. She's the most beautiful, most talented, and strongest woman I've ever met." Emily was disappointed in her mother and turned to leave. Her mother tried to chase after her, but Andrew blocked her and said, "Since you don't cherish her, I will love her and protect her from now on." Emily almost fainted, and Andrew supported her and picked her up. In the car, he applied ointment to the bruise on her mouth, Emily asked, "Will you always like me?" He answered, "Yes." She replied, "My parents promised to love me forever too." "Now, I don't believe in forever." Andrew kissed her forehead and said, "We have plenty of time ahead, and I'll prove it to you so you'll believe." Later, Emily was drunk and unstable on her feet. She said to him, "Can you hold me?" He picked her up, and she affectionately wrapped her arms around him, leaning against his chest. When they got home, she grabbed his tie, and he couldn't hold back any longer. He kissed her passionately for a long time, and this time, she didn't refuse. She wrapped her arms around his neck, responding to his kiss. The next morning, Emily woke up and remembered the kiss from last night. Andrew teased her about not taking responsibility for him, which made her feel even more shy. Soon after, Emily received a call from her mother, who told her that her half-sister had been diagnosed with osteochondroma and asked Emily to visit her in the hospital. Emily went to the hospital, and her sister noticed the bruise on her face, showing concern for her. But due to her stepfather's bad attitude toward Emily, she left quickly. Her mother chased after her and warned her not to get too involved with Andrew. She thought he was cold-hearted and looked down on Emily, only playing with her. Emily replied, "I have my own judgment, and I trust him. Please don't speak ill of him again." Andrew planned to ruin the Rose family's business. His friend asked him why, and he replied, "Because someone angered me." Emily decided to cook for Andrew. He hugged her from behind and helped her chop vegetables. She smiled, slowly getting used to physical contact with him. The next day, Emily's sister was scheduled for surgery, and she decided to go to the hospital to encourage her. Andrew wanted to go with her. When she asked why, he replied, "I'm going to back you up, so you won't be bullied." When they arrived at the hospital, Emily's stepfather told her, "I have to leave soon, so you stay here and take care of your sister for a few days." Andrew grabbed her hand and said, "I can't even bear to let Emily get too tired, and you dare to order her around like this? You don't even care for your own daughter. Is that reasonable?" Emily's mother reminded her husband that Andrew was a wealthy man, and they couldn't afford to offend him. Her stepfather backed down and fell silent. When they got home, Andrew pushed Emily onto the sofa and told her, "I'm going abroad on a business trip for a month. I hope that by the time I come back, you've made your decision." Emily expressed her concerns. She didn't feel secure about their relationship and was afraid of losing him. But he took her hand and said, "I plan to love you for a long, long time. Do you want to take a chance? You'll definitely win." He tightened his grip on her hand, and she smiled at him, saying, "Then I'll wait for you to come back." He was happy and pulled her into his arms. A week later, Emily was invited to participate in a live broadcast, but faced harsh criticism and attacks from netizens who accused her of being immoral. It turned out that news outlets had spread rumors about Emily being involved in sexual transactions with powerful men to gain connections and resources. Feeling helpless, she collapsed to the ground and began crying. The rumors were actually planned by Rose and Emily's male classmate. Rose thought that if she ruined Emily's reputation, Andrew would abandon her. But Andrew didn't do that. He immediately returned from abroad and tightly hugged Emily. He gently touched her face and said, "I'll get revenge for you." Just as he was about to take her away, she suddenly told him, "I love you." He was surprised and turned to look at her. She repeated, "I really love you." He kissed her lips, and she accidentally bit his lip, feeling embarrassed. But he smiled and said, "It's okay, I'll practice kissing with you." He then kissed her again. Afterward, Emily held on to Andrew outside the car, refusing to let go. He said, "Get in the car first. We can continue hugging once we're inside." He patted her head, and his assistant was stunned, giving him a thumbs up. After Emily got into the car, she immediately leaned on Andrew's shoulder. The assistant was even more pleased because he knew how much the boss cared for Emily. When he was abroad for business, he had heard about the situation back home and immediately abandoned his work to come back. Back at home, Andrew helped Emily into slippers and then made her a bowl of hot porridge. She was worried about him losing his big business deal, but he replied, "Nothing is more important than you. You will always come first." Emily told him that she had thought it through and was willing to be his girlfriend. Andrew kissed her and said, "Then I'll seal this with a kiss, and you're not allowed to change your mind." He then called his assistant and ordered him to quickly file a lawsuit against Rose, the male classmate, and all the media spreading rumors about Emily. The next day, Emily suddenly kissed Andrew in his study. His charisma during the meeting captivated her, and she couldn't take her eyes off him. He noticed her staring at him, but she pretended not to. She was about to go cook, but he picked her up and placed her on the desk, saying, "You only kissed the corner of my mouth just now." I wasn't satisfied. He held her hand and kissed her passionately. However, his niece Luna suddenly walked in and screamed when she saw them. Later, Andrew went to their room and told Luna, "Come on, take your aunt downstairs for dinner." Emily responded, "I'm not officially her aunt yet, so don't call me that." He took out a piece of candy and said, "You will be sooner or later." She smiled. "If you're also going through a long, endless night, please believe that flowers will bloom and the sun will shine through. Patiently wait for the person who loves you to appear. They will definitely come."